What is going on, guys? And thank you for Into the Chamber once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the decks I think you should be ready for when Nationals rolls around next month. Or depending on when you watch this, maybe even a little bit less than next month. Could just be a few weeks away. I've spent some time looking over all of the different RLEs and compiled all of the different decks and looked at which characters topped based on how much they played to see if there were any trends. And without getting too buried into all of the math, the bottom line is that the characters that we think are the best characters for the most part are the characters that are winning. I'm going to make this video a little straightforward, and today I'm going to talk about the overall 10 characters I would probably prepare for and think about if I was preparing to go to Nationals. I'm not going. I didn't have my invite. I came back way too late this year to try to get that. I suppose I could try for the last chance qualifier, but I wouldn't be able to get the time off work. So for this year, Nats is going to have to be missed for me, but maybe next year. I've got the different characters divided into 3 different groups, and we're going to start off with this first group that we have the background for here. This is the meta. By far, these 4 characters were the most represented across all RLEs, whether webcam, UK, America, doesn't matter. These 4 characters combined make up about a third of all tournament submissions across all RLEs, and they also make up about half of all top cut placements. They've also won across these various characters most of the RLEs, and by far these are the characters that you should be the most worried about. I'm just going to run through these real fast. First off, we've got Overhaul. You know him, you love him, or you hate him, depends if you've built him or not. This guy has won on every symbol. He ignores progressive, builds fast. He plays well with his kits on most of his symbols. Very flexible. Personally, I think he's more of a life character than anybody else. I know some people are really high on him for Earth, or they even like him on Evil. But to me, I think he plays the life value town game just way better than any other character. There's an argument that you can make for a couple of characters like Nejire or Momo, but we'll get to those later. That being said, Overhaul is the one who's gone the distance practically every time. And I think he's probably the best deck in the room. He might be like the second best deck in the room. There's an argument for Jiro, but in my mind, it's a toss-up between him and Jiro. I think anyone else is... I just can't put them in the same tier. Moving along, we've got the other structure deck character in Mirio. Mirio has kind of fallen off lately, but if I was a betting man, which, spoilers, I am, I would expect that we're going to see a lot of people bring Mirio kind of out from their... they're going to bring out the tools. They're going to show us some fresh stuff for Mirio, because a lot of people haven't been playing him with much success, but I think the people that know that this guy is busted are really working on him. A lot of the Mirio lists we've seen have tried to play this kind of like value-based, interactive, play a couple attacks, block a couple attacks. I'm of the opinion that a Mirio deck that gets there is probably just going to play really hard aggro and just try to slam move after move and keep their card pool clear. It's a little boring of a play style, but it's very effective. I think if you like playing Bird, you should give Mirio a shot for Nationals. That being said, if Mirio isn't your cup of tea for linear combo decks that don't really care what the opponent is doing, you could definitely look at Jiro on either Air or Good. This is a character who's demonstrated time and again that even if she doesn't win events, she consistently tops. She consistently overperforms. Compared to her submission rates, she's been a menace since the first set. Character is just messed up. She puts a tons of stats on everything. There's not much to say about Jiro that hasn't been said yet. We all know she's cranked. If you're looking for a just very aggressive, almost combo deck, Jiro should be your choice, I think, for Nationals. And then finally, this leaves us with Eraserhead. And Eraserhead's kind of interesting because he's playable on 2 symbols, and they're very different decks. Void is a borderline control deck where you're really trying to, block a lot of your opponent's moves and cancel their enhances and, farm momentum and blah, blah, blah. We all know that. But I actually want to spend a little time and talk about Death Eraserhead, because that's a character that has actually topped a few times and won 2 RLEs, but I don't see a lot of people playing. Death Eraserhead works almost like a combo deck, where you rely on Eraserhead to put speed on otherwise scary but slow death moves, and then you use a lot of the new death foundations that can pump damage. You can get to some crazy values, and it has a nice little snuck-in combo kill using Grenadier Bracers and Fierce Whirlwind, I believe is the card. It's the 5 diff where you can like blow up your stage and ready foundations for every card you blow up. They just play a whirlwind at the end of the string and they blow up their entire stage and use bracers for like 10 damage. And it's usually too much for you to handle. Anyways, I think both of these characters are great options. Depends if you want to play like a slower, more interactive defensive game, or if you just want to like hammer your opponent from out of left field. And the gross thing about the Death Eraserhead list is it actually plays like unreasonably good defense for how offensive it is, mostly off the back of Eraserhead himself and Erase. But you can still find some room to fit a few defensive pieces in there in like even like a tight 50 or so card deck list. So definitely not something you should sleep on. You should be ready for both Void and Death when you're preparing for Nationals. You're very likely to see both. All right, moving along. This is going to be a bit of a shorter list. This is kind of the not quite meta picks, but these are 3 characters that have still consistently overperformed. I'm just going to call them Rogue. The cutoff line between Rogue and what I'm described as Dark Horse or Untested is a little blurry. I could see some of the characters I'm going to talk about after this making it into the Rogue tier, depending on your personal stance and how you feel about it. But for me, this is kind of where I'm going to draw that line. So we've got Emajiki, Rappa, and Nomu. Nomu, I Nomu does really well in RLEs, mostly because I think people don't realize what Nomu is doing, and they don't put enough pressure on him, and they just kind of let him sit and farm until he gets like 4 or 5 attacks, and he plays like 6 or 7 mids in a row and kills you. I just don't see that happening at Nationals, so even though he's actually like a crazy overperformer, and I could still see a Nomu getting there if they run well and get good pairings and all that. Anything is possible. I don't think I would be a huge fan of Nomu for if you wanted to play something like off the beaten path a little bit. I think if you want to do that and play something a little unusual, it's aggressive. I think Rappa is actually the choice. Rappa has been a recurring character who actually tops a lot for how often he gets played. He doesn't actually see that much play, but he frequently tops. He has like, sorry, I had to check my notes. He's only been played 18 times, according to my notes. That number could be wrong a little bit. I've had to make a couple of assumptions, but either way, he's topped 6 times. So no matter how you cut it, a third of all Rappas have converted to tops at RLEs, which is very impressive. And I think if you want to play like competitively, you want to play something that people are aware of, might practice for, but it's not the front of their mind. It's just kind of in the back. I think Rappa is your best choice. Now, much like as how Rappa and Nomu provide you more like aggressive, very in-your-face options, if you want to play like an interactive defensive game, Emajiki has you covered. This is a guy who actually came out this set, and he's made a fair share of tops himself. In my opinion, he's actually a little underexplored. I know Tim Cardwell's had some success with this, and some other people have had it and even have had some tops. But I don't think he sees that much play overall, and there might be more to this character that you've got a month to practice and crack him, maybe a bit less, depends on when this goes up. But I could see maybe like really I could see any of these characters getting there once or twice. But Emajiki in particular, I think if they run well, they make good decisions. They utilize those momentum effects, and obviously they don't check threes when they play a Vast Hybrid on a 5 on their second turn. I really think this character could actually like squeak his way into Nats. It's a very good choice if you want to play a defensive character that isn't a Eraserhead. Now to finish up, these are my picks for Dark Horses. These are characters that I think are kind of underexplored and don't see a lot of play, but could really go the distance. Mimic is a character who has actually topped a few times, and some people play and talk about him as being very powerful, but he sees very low play rates, and I don't think this character has been solved or optimized. And I think if you wanted to play something that very few people are going to seriously practice for that has a shot, I think a Mimic is a good choice. He can randomly kill his opponent on 2. He's very powerful, very offensive, but because he's kind of like a soft 8-hander and has some damage mitigation, and he never goes into deadlock, usually doesn't go to deadlock, you can actually play like a slower game if you need to and back up and rely on breakers and cheerful uppercuts to clog card pools and kind of like stall the game out. I think he's actually a very flexible character that can do both really good offense and really good defense. So I think this is a guy that more people should be playing and experimenting with. Next up is Tokoyami. Tokoyami's been a menace since set 1, and he just keeps getting better and better. Even though people have kind of fallen off him and gone on to even crazier decks, I think Tokoyami is still a very reasonable choice. You just have to be kind of a high roller. You're going to be playing a lot of rounds at Nats, and honestly, selecting him is a bit of a gamble. But, if that coin comes of heads, I think you're going to do just fine. This last one's a kind of a hard one for me. I ended up settling on Momo, but I could see a few other characters in the slot. And this is kind of like the not overhaul but still plays life, or in this case also can play good, like value defensive character. You don't want to play overhaul. I could also see Nejire here as a good choice, even though she's yet to make a top. I think that character has legs. People just haven't like figured her out. And that's probably like a lack of experimentation, because she also doesn't see a lot of submission, and I doubt people practice with her a whole lot. Nejire has that 7-hander issue where she goes splat easily, though, if your opponent, she goes second and the opponent gets a really good hand. I think Momo having just a little bit more card pool clearing and a slightly beefier health total just barely edges out. But whether you want to put Nejire there or Momo, I think if you want to play like a value focused character that not a ton of people are going to practice for or think about, I think either of them are great choices. Now, it goes without saying, but this is just kind of an overview of the decks I think you should expect and prepare for at Nationals. If you have time, you can broaden your scope. You could even prepare for, like, all kinds of crazy stuff like Water Oswi if you want to. But, these are the characters that I think you're going to be seeing a lot of, and you should spend most of your time focusing and preparing for, especially these four right here. These are the ones that you're going to see quite a bit at Nationals. Some people are going to bring out some really crazy, spicy tech, because this tournament season has, better or for worse, has kind of incentivized people to not come out and compete and instead to focus kind of in-house. And we're going to see a lot of the fruits of those like in-house training really come to a head in Nationals. It's going to be a really, really neat tournament scene. I'm kind of bummed I can't go. Hopefully I'll get to go next year. In the near future, I'm going to cover a lot of these characters. I'm going to suspend the set reviews. I got to that late, and honestly, my opinions on the set aren't that different than most of the other people that are doing set reviews. So, I mean, if you really want to hear what I think about Jetburn or a certain card or character from Jetburn, you can let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to respond to that. But otherwise, keep an eye out. I'm going to be covering some of these characters in greater depth, kind of what they do, what you should do if you're playing with them or playing against them, just as like a primer of sorts, maybe 6 or 7 minutes per character, nothing crazy, to help get you ready for Nats, at least for these 4 major characters each. I'll try to cover multiple symbols for characters that can play on multiple symbols, but sometimes I think it's going to be like a one symbol affair, especially with Mirio. But yeah, this was just the overview. I'm going to be looking real forward to digging into this, and can't wait to watch Nationals. Make sure to check out the next one. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. Once again, thank you for being in the chamber, and I'll see you the next time. All right now, bye-bye.